André Rieu is the happiest man in music, but behind that $40 million smile, the King of Waltz is hiding a crisis that could silence his violin forever. At 74 years old, a recent backstage collapse has revealed a terrifying truth. His entire global empire depends on one man's heartbeat, and the clock is ticking. To the millions of fans who pack out arenas from Melbourne to Maastricht, an André Rieu concert is the ultimate escape. It is a fairy tale world of cascading ball gowns, bursts of colorful confetti, sweeping 3-4 signatures, and pure, unadulterated nostalgia. Watching him on stage, laughing, joking, and playing his priceless Stradivarius, you would think he has unlocked the secret to eternal youth. He represents a carefree era, a bubble of joy in an increasingly stressful world. But if you peer past the gilded columns of his stage sets and look behind the velvet curtains, you will find one of the most stressful, high-risk, and fragile business operations in the entire entertainment industry. This is not just a musical tour. It is a sprawling, privately funded empire that has no safety net. While pop stars rely on massive corporate backing, record labels, and algorithmic streaming revenue, the King of Waltz relies entirely on his own physical endurance. There is no corporate board of directors to bail him out, no government subsidies to keep the lights on, and most crucially, no understudy waiting in the wings. To understand why we should worry, we have to look at the sheer scale of the machine André Rieu has built. At the heart of his empire is the Johann Strauss Orchestra, a massive ensemble of over 120 permanent employees. This includes not just the world-class instrumentalists, but a full choir, technical crews, administrative staff, truck drivers, wardrobe designers, and even personal chefs who travel with the tour to ensure everyone is fed like royalty. Unlike standard orchestral setups where musicians are hired on a freelance basis, André's team are permanent employees. He pays them year-round, offering them stability and a sense of family that is virtually unheard of in classical music. This creates an incredibly loyal team, but it also creates a terrifying financial burden. The monthly overhead just to keep this organization alive and running is estimated to be over €1 million. Think about that for a second. Before a single violin bow touches a string, before a single ticket is sold for the next tour, André Rieu must generate millions of euros every single month just to cover salaries and basic operations. It is a beautiful, noble way to run a business, but it is also an economic tightrope. The sheer logistics of transporting this 120-person family around the globe is a triumph of modern engineering, but it is also a logistical nightmare. They travel with custom-designed tour buses, tons of delicate stage equipment, and hundreds of bespoke, handcrafted Victorian gowns, some of which cost up to £3,000 each. André refuses to cut corners. He has famously stated that he wants every single detail of his show to feel like an authentic, magical dream, which means no cheap materials and no compromise on quality. If a soprano needs a new gown, it is designed from scratch with the finest fabrics. If the stage needs a specific floral arrangement, it is sourced at premium cost. This unyielding dedication to perfection has earned him a legendary reputation, but it also means his profit margins are razor-thin compared to the massive scale of his revenue. The entire operation is a finely tuned instrument, but it is an instrument that can only be played by one master. In any typical corporate entity, if the CEO falls ill, the chief operating officer steps in, the division heads keep running, and the business continues to generate revenue. In the world of André Rieu, there is no replacement. If André cannot perform, the show does not go on, the ticket sales dry up, and the massive financial engine grinds to a sudden, catastrophic halt. But to truly understand how terrifyingly close we are to the end, we have to talk about what happened in Mexico City. It wasn't just a postponed show. It was a financial and physical warning shot that sent shockwaves through the entire industry. When André collapsed, the realization hit: there is no understudy. There is no backup André Rieu. If he falls, the empire doesn't just stumble, it completely disintegrates. Let me show you the hidden mathematics of this looming catastrophe. To grasp the true fragility of this empire, we have to look back at the moment André Rieu almost lost everything. The year was 2008, and André had a vision that was as magnificent as it was financially reckless. He wanted to recreate the magic of Vienna's Schloss Schönbrunn, a breathtaking imperial palace, and take it on tour around the world. But he didn't want a simple painted backdrop or a digital projection. No, André wanted a full-scale, three-dimensional replica of the palace to serve as his touring stage. We are talking about a structure that was over 125 meters wide, 30 meters high, and filled with fountains, an actual ice rink for figure skaters, ballroom dancers in period costumes, and even a golden state carriage. The ambition was unparalleled, but so was the price tag. The construction of this massive touring set cost an astronomical 35 million euros. Because of the sheer size, it required immense logistics to transport. They couldn't just throw it in the back of a few trucks. It required dozens of shipping containers to move across oceans, particularly to Australia, where he had booked massive stadium shows. And because the construction and deconstruction took so long, he actually had to have 3 separate identical castles built so they could be leapfrogged from one city to the next to keep up with the tour schedule. It was a beautiful dream, but the financial mathematics simply did not work. Ticket sales, though massive, could not keep pace with the gargantuan overhead of shipping, assembling, and maintaining 3 giant castles while paying for hundreds of cast and crew members. Before he knew it, André Rieu was facing a staggering $63 million debt. He was, for all intents and purposes, completely bankrupt. The bank sent 8 high-level executives to his home to assess the damage. 7 of them wanted to pull the plug immediately, seize his assets, and shut down the tour to recoup whatever losses they could. It was a moment of absolute despair that threatened to erase decades of hard work in an instant. He was forced to mortgage everything he owned. His production company, his home, his future earnings, and even his most prized possession, his legendary 1732 Stradivarius violin, were put on the line. The bank literally owned his name. Had it not been for one young, forward-thinking banker who convinced his superiors to let André keep playing so he could earn the money back, the King of Waltz would have been silenced right then and there. It took years of relentless touring, playing over 100 grueling shows a year, and ruthlessly cutting down operational costs to finally climb out of that deep financial hole. While he eventually paid back every single cent and rebuilt his fortune, the scar of that bankruptcy scare remains. It proved that André is not a conservative businessman. He is an artistic gambler who is willing to risk absolute ruin for the sake of the spectacle. And that gambling instinct has not faded with age. This brings us to the physical reality of what it takes to sustain this high-stakes lifestyle. At 76 years old, André's schedule would exhaust a performer half his age. He is on airplanes, in hotels, and on stage constantly. And unlike a pop singer who can rely on pre-recorded backing tracks, lip-syncing, or high-energy dancers to carry the show while they take a breather, a classical violinist and conductor has nowhere to hide. André must stand on his feet for up to 3 hours, playing high-tempo virtuoso passages on a delicate instrument, while simultaneously managing the tempo of a 100-piece orchestra and engaging with a stadium audience of tens of thousands. The physical toll on the joints, the back, and the mind is immense. And then there is the biology. Over the years, André's body has sent him severe warning signs that he is pushing himself past the breaking point. He has suffered from vestibular neuritis, a viral infection of the inner ear that causes sudden, debilitating vertigo. For a violinist, vertigo is a career-ending nightmare. When the vestibular nerve is inflamed, the brain loses its sense of balance. The world spins violently, causing intense nausea and making it physically impossible to stand, let alone play a complex musical instrument with precision. When this illness struck him in the past, he was forced to cancel major tour in the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand, leaving him devastated and once again facing massive financial losses. But the most alarming wake-up call came during his tour in Mexico City. The demand for his shows was unprecedented, with multiple sold-out dates at the massive Auditorio Nacional. The excitement was electric, but backstage, a silent crisis was unfolding. The grueling travel, the high altitude of Mexico City, and the sheer exhaustion of back-to-back performances finally caught up with him. He suffered a physical collapse that forced his team to immediately cancel the remaining performances and fly him back to the Netherlands. The cancellation sent shockwaves through his fan base and his business. His son, Rieu, who has quietly been taking on more managerial responsibility within the company, had to step forward and handle the fallout. The incident made one thing abundantly clear. Despite his public declarations that he intends to perform until he is 140 years old, the physical limits of the human body are absolute. Pierre's growing role in the company isn't just a son helping his father. It is the silent preparation for an inevitable transition of power. But how do you transition a brand that is entirely synonymous with one man's face, voice, and violin? To see how fragile this ecosystem truly is, we only have to look at how they survived the global pandemic. When the world shut down, live entertainment ceased to exist. For almost 2 years, the Johann Strauss Orchestra could not perform a single concert. For any other business, this would mean immediate layoffs. But André refused to let his musical family go. He kept all 120 staff members on the payroll, paying their salaries and burning through his reserves at a rate of €1 million a month. As the months dragged on and his reserves dwindled, André faced the very real prospect of having to sell his beloved 1732 Stradivarius violin, an instrument worth millions of dollars that had been his musical partner for decades. He famously remarked that he would rather sell the violin than lose his orchestra, stating that he could always find another violin, but he could never replace the unique bond and talent of his orchestra. Though a €10 million state aid package from the Dutch government ultimately saved him from having to sell his prized instrument, the crisis exposed the fundamental flaw in his business model. There is no passive income stream. There are no royalties or streaming residuals that can generate the kind of cash flow required to sustain a 120-person company. The entire operation is a live performance machine. If the machine stops, the money stops. This leaves us with a profound and worrying question. What happens next? André Rieu has built a beautiful, joyful empire that has brought happiness to millions of people around the world. He has defied the stuffy, elitist conventions of classical music and made it accessible, fun, and deeply emotional. But he has done so by building a house of cards on a single foundation stone, his own physical health. As he continues to push the boundaries of his endurance, traveling to every corner of the globe to perform, his fans watch not just with admiration, but with a growing sense of anxiety. We cheer for his energy, we marvel at his talent, and we lose ourselves in the beautiful waltzes. But deep down, we know that every concert could be the last. The King of Waltz has spent his entire life making the world dance, but as the years press on, we must confront the reality that even the most beautiful music must eventually come to an end. The ultimate tragedy of André Rieu is that the very thing that makes his empire so magical, his irreplaceable, singular presence, is also the very thing that could bring it all crashing down.